Welcome back to Bigjuicyhog Gaming, where we dive deep into the lore that makes gaming worlds come alive. Today we're venturing into one of Shadowrun's darkest corners, a place where magic meets virology, where humanity ends and something else begins, and where the line between predator and parasite becomes terrifyingly blurred. Imagine waking up with a fever you can't shake. Your body aches, your skin feels wrong, you're hungry, but food makes you sick. Then the sun rises, and for the first time in your life, daylight burns like acid on your flesh. You look in the mirror and see something that's still you, but also, fundamentally, horrifyingly not. You've contracted HMHVV, the Human-Metahuman Vampiric Virus, and your life as you knew it is over. This isn't Hollywood vampirism with sparkles and romance. This is Shadowrun, where magic returned to a world of concrete and chrome, and brought with it diseases that turn metahumanity into predators that hunt their former friends and family. Today, we're exploring the science, the magic, and the horror of one of the 6 world's most terrifying conditions. To understand HMHVV, we must first understand the world it emerged in. When the Mayan calendar ended on December 21, 2011, magic didn't just return to Earth. It exploded back into existence with a force that reshaped reality itself. This event, known as the Awakening, brought dragons from their ancient slumber, turned ordinary children into elves and dwarves, and unleashed forces that science struggled to explain. But the Awakening didn't just change the present, it awakened things from the past. Ancient magical diseases that had been dormant for thousands of years suddenly found themselves viable again in a world saturated with mana. HMHVV was one of these ancient horrors, a magical pathogen that had terrorized prehistory and now found a new playground in the sprawls and shadows of the 6th world. The scientific community initially didn't know what to make of it. Traditional virology couldn't explain how the virus worked. It didn't behave like any pathogen in the medical databases. It responded to magical energy. It transformed its hosts in ways that violated known biology. Most disturbingly, it seemed almost intelligent, adapting its effects based on the host metatype and magical potential. The designation Human-Metahuman Vampiric Virus was actually a corporate sanitization of something far older and more primal. Ancient cultures had their own names for it. The Blood Curse, the Predator's Gift, the Dark Transformation. These weren't just superstitions, they were accurate descriptions of a magical disease that had claimed victims throughout human history, only to fade when the magic ebbed from the world. Modern understanding of HMHVV divides it into multiple strains, each producing different transformations. But they all share common characteristics: an allergic reaction to sunlight, a need to consume metahuman essence in some form, enhanced physical capabilities, and most importantly, fundamental changes to the host's consciousness and psychology. HMHVV isn't a single disease, it's a family of related magical pathogens, each producing distinct transformations based on the infected host's original metatype. The virus reads the host's genetic and magical signature, then rewrites their biology according to ancient arcane patterns. The most famous and arguably most civilized strain produces what the public know as vampires. When humans or elves contract HMHVV strain 1, they transform into vampires. When orcs or trolls are infected, they become a Wendigo. When dwarves contract it, the result is goblin transformations. Vampires. The human and elven variant retain much of their original intelligence and personality, at least initially. They develop an allergy to sunlight that causes severe burns within minutes of exposure, forcing them into nocturnal existence. Their physical capabilities increase dramatically, enhanced strength, reflexes that put Olympic athletes to shame, and regenerative abilities that can heal bullet wounds in hours. But the most defining characteristic is the essence strain. Vampires must consume the magical essence of living metahumans to survive, typically through drinking blood. This isn't just physical sustenance, they're literally feeding on the victim's life force, their soul made tangible. A vampire can survive on animal blood or synthetic substitutes, but these provide minimal sustenance. To truly thrive, they need metahuman victims. The psychological changes are perhaps more disturbing than the physical ones. Vampires develop what researchers call predatory psychology. Their empathy for potential prey diminishes while their hunting instincts sharpen. They don't necessarily become evil, but they start viewing uninfected metahumanity differently. Food, resource, cattle. Some vampires resist these urges, clinging to their former humanity through sheer willpower and ethical frameworks built before infection. They limit their feeding, take only what they need from willing donors, or work with medical facilities to obtain stored blood. These ethical vampires walk a razor's edge between their needs and their morals, fighting their nature every single night. Others embrace their transformation completely, viewing themselves as the next step in evolution. These vampires build powerful structures in the shadows, creating courts and hierarchies that mirror and manipulate mortal society. They see themselves not as diseased, but as ascended, predators reclaiming their rightful place at the top of the food chain. Wendigo, the orcish and trollish variants, take a very different path. The same virus that creates elegant vampires from humans transforms orcs and trolls into massive, fur-covered predators that combine savage strength with cunning intelligence. Standing 8 to 9 feet tall and covered in white or gray fur, Wendigo are the stuff of nightmares in the Northern Territories. Unlike vampires, Wendigo must consume actual flesh, not just blood. Their digestive systems are completely rewritten to process only metahuman tissue. They literally cannot digest normal human food. This makes them far more difficult to hide and far more dangerous to the general population. A vampire can possibly pass for normal. A Wendigo is obviously a monster. The psychological transformation is even more severe. Wendigo develop an overwhelming hunger that dominates their consciousness. The most intelligent among them can control this hunger, planning their hunts and choosing targets carefully. But many lose themselves entirely to the predatory instinct, becoming little more than intelligent animals that hunt, feed, and hide. Goblins, the dwarven strain, represent yet another variation, transforming infected dwarves into hunched, gray-skinned creatures with long fingers and an allergy to sunlight. Goblins develop a need to consume metahuman flesh like Wendigo, but retain more of their original personality and cunning. They're smaller, stealthier, and often more disturbed by what they've become than other HMHVV victims. HMHVV Strain 2, the Shapeshifters. The second major strain of HMHVV produces shapeshifters, infected who can transform between their original form and a hybrid predator state. This strain's effects vary dramatically by metatype. Loup-Garou, infected humans, develop the ability to transform into wolf-like creatures, combining human intelligence with predatory instincts and enhanced physical capabilities. Unlike classic werewolves from mythology, Loup-Garou retain consciousness and control during transformation, though their psychological state shifts towards aggression. Zu-Nu-Kwa, infected trolls become massive bear-like creatures in their transformed state, standing over 10 feet tall and possessing strength that can bend steel bars. They are among the most physically dangerous HMHVV variants, capable of tearing through security barriers and armored opponents with terrifying ease. The shapeshifter strains allow more interaction with normal society. The infected can maintain their original appearance most of the time, holding down jobs and maintaining relationships. But the transformation is involuntary during times of stress, and the need to hunt and feed remains constant. Many shapeshifters live double lives, maintaining carefully constructed normalcy while secretly hunting to satisfy their virus-driven needs. HMHVV Strain 3, the True Monsters. The third strain is where HMHVV becomes truly nightmarish. These variants produce creatures so alien and horrifying that they can no longer pass for anything remotely metahuman. Banshees result from infected elves and produce ghostly, ethereal creatures whose very presence drains life and whose screams can kill. They become partially incorporeal, able to phase through solid matter and resist physical damage. Grendels transform infected trolls into massive deformed monsters that combine incredible physical power with reduced intelligence. They're rage-driven berserkers of the HMHVV family, nearly impossible to reason with and devastatingly dangerous in combat. Nosferatu, not to be confused with the vampires, are what happens when certain individuals with specific genetic markers contract the virus. They become twisted, monstrous versions of their former selves, losing almost all humanity while gaining terrifying abilities. Understanding HMHVV requires accepting that the sixth world, magic, and biology aren't separate phenomena. They're two aspects of the same underlying reality. The virus itself exists simultaneously as a physical microorganism and as a magical construct, operating according to rules that span both paradigms. From a medical perspective, HMHVV is a retrovirus that rewrites the host DNA at the cellular level. It integrates itself into the host genome, making the infection permanent and irreversible through conventional means. The virus is transmitted through exchange of bodily fluids, typically through bites, scratches, or blood contact, and has an incubation period of roughly 24 to 72 hours. During the incubation period, the infected experiences flu-like symptoms, fever, aches, sensitivity to light and sound, and extreme fatigue. As the virus rewrites their biology, the symptoms intensify. The transformation itself takes anywhere from a few hours to several days depending on the strain and the host's constitution. But the magical component is what makes HMHVV truly unique. The virus doesn't just alter genetics, it fundamentally changes the host's relationship with mana, the magical energy that permeates the awakened world. Infected individuals become what magical theorists call obligate essence parasites, creatures that must consume the magical essence of other living beings to survive. This essence consumption is what separates HMHVV from mundane diseases. When a vampire drinks blood, they're not just consuming hemoglobin and nutrients. They're draining the victim's essence, the magical component that makes them truly alive. This is why synthetic blood provides minimal sustenance to vampires. It lacks the essential magical component that the virus requires to sustain its host. The virus also grants infected individuals access to unique magical abilities. Many vampires develop powers of mental influence, able to cloud minds and implant suggestions. Some strains grant enhanced physical regeneration that borders on the supernatural. Others provide abilities that seem to violate known physics. The Banshees' ability to phase through solid matter, the vampire's mist form, the Zhu-Nu-Qua's terrifying transformation. These abilities aren't learned or trained. They're intrinsic to the virus itself, suggesting that HMHVV carries within it something like genetic memory or magical programming from whatever ancient force originally created it. HMHVV spreads through direct contact with infected biological materials, most commonly through bites or deep scratches that introduce the carrier's bodily fluids into the victim's bloodstream. Unlike mundane viruses, HMHVV cannot be transmitted through casual contact, airborne particles, or contaminated surfaces. It requires intimate, usually violent contact between infected and victim. The infection process follows a predictable pattern. Stage 1. Exposure, 0 to 6 hours. The victim has been exposed to HMHVV through bite, scratch, or blood contact. They may not yet realize anything is wrong. Some victims report a burning sensation at the wound site, but many experience no immediate symptoms. During this stage, immediate medical intervention with specialized antiviral treatments can sometimes prevent the infection from taking hold, but the window is incredibly narrow. Stage 2. Incubation, 6 to 24 hours. Flu-like symptoms begin: fever, chills, body aches, sensitivity to light and sound. The victim becomes increasingly fatigued and may experience vivid, disturbing dreams. Medical scans show unusual activity in the nervous system and abnormal cellular behavior. Standard antiviral medications prove completely ineffective. Stage 3. Transformation onset, 24 to 48 hours. The true horror begins. The victim's body starts changing at a cellular level. Physical symptoms intensify dramatically: extreme photosensitivity, complete loss of appetite for normal food, metabolic changes. Psychological changes emerge: heightened aggression, predatory instincts, altered perceptions. The victim may experience severe disassociation as their consciousness adapts to their changing neurology. Stage 4. Completion, 48 to 72 hours. The transformation finishes. The victim has become one of the infected. Their physical form is changed according to their strain and original metatype. Their psychological state has shifted to accommodate their new nature. They now require essence to survive, with all the implications that entails. There is no cure. Once a transformation completes, it's permanent. Magic that can heal the most grievous wounds cannot reverse HMHVV. Cybernetic enhancement can't override it. Even death and resurrection magic fails to remove the infection. The virus has become too integrated with the host's essential nature to be separated. Some researchers theorize that HMHVV isn't actually a disease in the conventional sense, but rather a magical curse that uses biological mechanisms as its delivery system. This would explain why it's so resistant to both magical and medical treatment. It exists in a category that transcends both healing paradigms. Living with the infection. Being infected with HMHVV doesn't just change your body, it completely restructures your entire existence. You become something that metahuman society considers a monster, a predator, and an abomination. But from the inside, you're still you, mostly. You still have memories, relationships, dreams. You also happen to need to feed on other people to survive. The infected community, those who've contracted HMHVV and retained enough humanity to seek connection with others like themselves, exist in the shadows of every major sprawl. They form support networks, sharing information about where to feed safely, how to avoid hunters, and techniques for managing their condition without losing themselves entirely. Some infected establish feeding arrangements with willing donors, metahumans who for various reasons agree to provide blood or essence on a regular basis. These arrangements might be transactional, exchanging money or services for feeding rights, relationship-based, lovers or friends who accept the infected person's nature, or ideological, activists who believe the infected deserve support rather than extermination. Medical facilities in more progressive areas have begun offering synthetic blood products and essence supplements that can provide basic sustenance to vampires and some other strains. These products don't fully satisfy the hunger. Nothing artificial can truly replace the real thing, but they allow ethical infected individuals to survive without victimizing others. Underground clinics operate in the shadows, providing medical care to infected individuals who can't risk exposure in mainstream hospitals. These facilities walk a legal and ethical tightrope, helping beings that society considers monsters while trying to prevent them from harming innocents. But not all infected seek redemption or accommodation. Some embrace their new nature completely, viewing themselves as apex predators in a world of prey. They form hunting packs, stalking the sprawls for easy victims. Some establish elaborate criminal enterprises, using their enhanced abilities and predatory instincts to dominate illegal markets. The most dangerous infected are those who've completely lost themselves to the virus. Feral creatures that retain just enough intelligence to be effective hunters, but not enough humanity to feel remorse. These beings stalk the barrens and abandoned districts, creating entire territories where uninfected metahumans dare not venture after dark. Where predators exist, hunters inevitably follow. The existence of HMHVV has spawned an entire industry dedicated to tracking, containing, and eliminating the infected. These vampire hunters range from corporate security specialists to freelance shadowrunners to obsessive vigilantes driven by personal tragedy. Corporate security teams approach infected hunting as a pest control problem. They use standardized protocols, UV floodlights to mobilize vampires, specialized ammunition designed to cause maximum trauma to regenerating tissue, containment equipment to capture specimens for research. These teams are professional, efficient, and utterly ruthless. An infected individual caught by corporate hunters can expect either immediate termination or indefinite detention in research facilities where they'll be studied until they're no longer useful. Shadowrunner teams take infected hunting contracts for the Nuyen. Some specialize in it, developing expertise in tracking and eliminating specific strains. They're motivated by profit rather than moral conviction, which makes them both more reliable and more unpredictable than ideological hunters. A Shadowrunner might kill an infected monster one night and accept a contract from an infected crime boss the next. Business is business. Then there are the personal hunters, individuals who've lost ones to HMHVV and dedicated their lives to revenge. These hunters are the most dangerous because they're the most committed and the least concerned with their own survival. They develop encyclopedic knowledge of infected weaknesses, collect specialized weapons and equipment, and pursue their quarry with single-minded determination. Magical traditions have their own responses to HMHVV. Some shamanic traditions view the infected as corrupted spirits that must be cleansed. Certain hermetic schools treat them as magical aberrations requiring banishment. Religious organizations, particularly those with old connections to vampire hunting traditions, sometimes maintain specialized teams dedicated to destroying the infected. The hunter's methods vary by target and circumstance. UV weapons. Ultraviolet light causes severe pain and damage to most HMHVV strains. Military-grade UV floodlights can immobilize vampires within seconds, causing severe burns and preventing their regenerative abilities from functioning. Portable UV weapons allow hunters to create daylight on demand. Wooden stakes. The old myths weren't entirely wrong. Wood through the heart does work on vampires, though not because of any mystical property of wood itself. Severe trauma to major organs overwhelms even vampires' regeneration, especially when the object remains in place preventing healing. The stake through the heart became popular because it's effective and because wood doesn't trigger metal detectors. Specialized ammunition, APDS, armor-piercing discarding sabot rounds, hollow points filled with silver or garlic extract, both of which are toxic to certain strains, and explosive rounds designed to cause maximum internal trauma. Hunters also use weapons that deliver massive kinetic force, enough to pulp organs faster than they can regenerate. Magic. Direct magical attacks that target the spirit or essence of the infected individual. Particularly powerful mana-based spells can overwhelm the magical component of HMHVV, causing catastrophic system failure in the host. The legal status of HMHVV-infected individuals varies dramatically across the Six World's diverse jurisdictions. In some nations and corporate territories, infection with HMHVV is an automatic death sentence. Infected individuals have no legal rights and can be killed on sight by authorized personnel. In others, the infected have limited protections and can petition for special status that allows them to exist legally as long as they follow strict protocols. The UCAS, United Canadian and American States, takes a middle ground approach that varies by individual state. Some jurisdictions classify the infected as dangerous metahuman variants with limited rights but legal recognition. Others treat them as active threats to public safety with no protected status. This creates a patchwork legal landscape where an infected individual might be a registered citizen with protected status in Seattle, but face immediate execution if they cross into California Free State territory. The Native American nations generally take a harder line, viewing HMHVV as a magical corruption that must be contained and eliminated. Infected individuals found in NAN territories face quick trials and quicker executions. Some nations make exceptions for those who can prove they were forcibly infected and seek treatment, but the burden of proof is enormous. European nations tend towards more progressive policies, at least officially. Several countries recognize infected citizens and provide them with legal avenues for survival, registering feeding from willing donors, synthetic blood ration programs, mandatory counseling, and monitoring. But this acceptance comes with intensive surveillance and strict behavioral requirements. One violation, one loss of control, and the infected individual faces immediate revocation of their protections. Corporate territories are purely pragmatic. If an infected individual is useful, possessing valuable skills, knowledge, or abilities, they might be offered contracts with the corporation, complete with feeding arrangements and legal protection. If they're not useful, they're classified as threats and dealt with accordingly. Corps have been known to deliberately infect valuable assets when the enhanced abilities outweigh the complications. The social landscape is even more complex than the legal one. Public opinion on the infected ranges from sympathetic support, viewing them as victims of circumstance deserving compassion, to virulent hatred, seeing them as monsters that should be exterminated. This divide has created social movements on both sides. Infected rights organizations work to secure legal protections, provide support services, and combat negative stereotypes. They argue that HMHVV victims didn't choose their condition and shouldn't be punished for their biology. These groups walk a difficult line between advocacy and accusation of enabling predators. Anti-infected movements campaign for stricter laws, mandatory testing, and elimination protocols. They point to victims of infected predation and argue that compassion for monsters costs innocent lives. Some of these groups have ties to extremist organizations and engage in vigilante violence. For megacorporations, HMHVV isn't just a public health crisis, it's an opportunity. The enhanced physical capabilities, regenerative properties, and magical abilities displayed by infected individuals represent potentially marketable assets if they can be controlled and replicated. Multiple corps maintain secret research programs studying HMHVV. As Technology has perhaps the most extensive HMHVV research program, maintained through their magical research divisions and backed by access to blood magic traditions. Their research focuses on understanding the magical component of the virus and potentially weaponizing it. Rumors persist of As Technology's facilities where volunteers are deliberately infected under the controlled conditions to study the transformation process. Mitsuhama Computer Technologies approaches HMHVV from a different angle, studying how the virus integrates with cybernetic enhancement. Their researchers have discovered that HMHVV-infected individuals can accept certain types of cyberware that would normally be rejected, opening possibilities for enhanced super soldiers combining technology and magical advantages. Shiawase focuses on medical containment and treatment, or more accurately, on developing products they can market to both infected population and those seeking protection from infection. They develop synthetic blood products, essence supplements, and UV-based security systems profiting from both sides of the conflict. But corporate HMHVV research is dangerous on multiple levels. Containment breaches have occurred at multiple facilities, releasing test subjects into surrounding populations. Some researchers become infected themselves, either through accident or deliberate self-experimentation. And the ethical implications of deliberately infecting test subjects or conducting experiments on infected prisoners raise questions that corps prefer not to answer publicly. The holy grail of HMHVV research is a cure, or more accurately, a commercially marketable cure that could be sold at premium prices. Despite decades of research and billions of new yen in investment, no corporation has successfully developed a reliable method for reversing HMHVV infection. Some companies claim to have made progress, selling expensive treatments to desperate infected individuals that may provide temporary symptom relief at best and deadly side effects at worst. Notable infected individuals, legends, and monsters. The history of the Sixth World includes numerous infected individuals who've achieved fame, infamy, or both. Their stories illustrate the range of paths available to those transformed by HMHVV. The Draco Foundation's protected infected. Several infected individuals have found sanctuary and employment with the Draco Foundation, funded by the great dragon Dunkelzahn's will. These individuals serve as researchers, security personnel, and advisors, using their unique perspectives and abilities in service of the Foundation's goals. They demonstrate the integration between infected and baseline metahumanity is possible under the right circumstances. Crime boss vampires. Several major criminal organizations are run by or include infected individuals in their leadership. Their enhanced abilities, extended lifespans, and lack of normal human concerns make them formidable operators in the criminal underworld. Some have built empires that span decades, maintaining power through a combination of supernatural abilities and accumulated wealth and influence. Dr. Thomas Hildebrandt, one of the few publicly acknowledged infected individuals to maintain an academic position, Dr. Hildebrandt teaches magical theory at MIT while managing his HMHVV condition through ethical feeding arrangements and synthetic supplements. He's become a controversial figure, proof that infected can retain their humanity and contribute to society, but also a lightning rod for any anti-infected sentiment. The Wendigo of the Salish City Council territories. Multiple reports describe a Wendigo, or possibly several, operating in the remote wilderness of Inean territories, preying on hunters and hikers who venture too far from civilization. This creature has achieved near-legendary status, with sightings spanning years and attributes that seem impossible for a single infected individual. It may represent what infected become when they completely abandon humanity and embrace their predatory nature. At its core, HMHVV forces society and individual characters to confront difficult philosophical questions. When does a person stop being a person? Is someone who's been forcibly transformed into a predator responsible for their actions? Do enhanced abilities and extended lifespans make the infected a new species, or are they still fundamentally metahuman? The continuity of consciousness argument suggests that infected individuals remain the same person they were before transformation. They retain their memories, their personality core, their relationships and values. The transformation is physical and behavioral, but the essential self remains. By this logic, an infected person deserves the same moral consideration as anyone else with a medical condition that affects their behavior. The fundamental nature argument counters the HMHVV doesn't just change behavior, it rewrites the infected individual's basic drives and perceptions. A vampire doesn't just prefer blood, they literally need to consume the essence of other beings to survive. This creates an inherent conflict with the rest of metahumanity that can't be resolved through accommodation. By this logic, the infected are tragic victims of their condition, but they're also genuine threats that society must protect against. The rights and responsibilities framework attempts middle ground. Infected individuals retain personhood and deserve basic rights, but those rights come with responsibilities and restrictions based on their condition. Just as someone with violent psychosis might be institutionalized for public safety while still being recognized as a person deserving of humane treatment, infected individuals might require special management without being classified as monsters worthy only of extermination. Real-world legal systems struggle with these questions. Courts have issued contradictory rulings. One case recognizes an infected plaintiff's right to sue for discrimination. Another strips an infected defendant of all legal protections. The inconsistency reflects society's deeper uncertainty about how to categorize and respond to beings that exist in the liminal space between human and monster. Player character considerations. Playing the infected. For Shadowrun players, HMHVV infection offers unique role-playing opportunities and mechanical advantages, but it comes with significant complications that go beyond simple stat modifications. From a mechanical perspective, infected characters gain substantial benefits: enhanced physical attributes, regenerative abilities, powers specific to their strain, and often extended lifespans. These advantages can make them considerably more capable than baseline characters in certain situations. A vampire street samurai combines the already formidable combat abilities of a cybered fighter with supernatural speed and strength. But the drawbacks are equally significant. The essence drain requirement means infected characters must regularly feed on other beings, creating moral dilemmas and practical complications. Sensitivity to sunlight restricts vampires and some other strains to nocturnal activity. Public exposure as infected often means immediate legal and social consequences. The real value of playing an infected character lies in the role-playing opportunities. How does your character deal with the transformation? Do they cling to their former humanity or embrace their new nature? How do they navigate relationships with uninfected teammates? What lines will they cross to survive, and what lines won't they cross? An infected character creates natural dramatic tension. Every feeding is a potential crisis. Every exposure to sunlight is a risk. Every new person they meet might become a victim, an ally who accepts their nature, or a hunter who wants them dead. These complications drive compelling stories if handled thoughtfully. For game masters, introducing HMHVV into a campaign requires careful consideration. Infected NPCs can serve as sympathetic victims, formidable antagonists, or complex allies who exist in moral gray zones. The virus can create personal stakes. What if an NPC the players care about becomes infected? What if one of the PCs gets bitten during a run? The key is treating HMHVV as more than just a combat challenge or character buff. It's a condition that fundamentally changes how an individual exists in the world, creating opportunities for horror, tragedy, ethical dilemmas, and stories about identity and humanity that resonate beyond simply monster hunting. HMHVV represents one of Shadowrun's most effective horror elements because it makes the monstrous personal and intimate. It's not about distant cosmic threats or incomprehensible alien invasions. It's about your friend, your partner, your family member waking up one morning fundamentally changed and fundamentally hungry. In a world of cybernetic enhancement and genetic modifications where humanity regularly chooses to replace flesh with chrome and modify their bodies in countless ways, HMHVV asks a pointed question. Where's the line? If choosing to install cyberware that makes you stronger and faster is acceptable, why is being involuntarily transformed in ways that make you stronger and faster monstrous? Is it the lack of choice? The need to feed on others? The loss of humanity that comes with the condition? The infected exist in the shadows, literally and metaphorically, as reminders that the Six Worlds magic comes with costs. The return of wonder brought the return of horror. The awakening of power awakened ancient predators, and ordinary people caught in their transformation must somehow find ways to remain people, even as their biology insists they become monsters. Some succeed. They build lives in the margins, maintaining their ethics and humanity despite their nature. They prove that HMHVV doesn't have to mean losing yourself, that predatory biology doesn't necessarily mean predatory morality. Others fail. They disappear into the darkness, becoming the monsters that hunt the sprawls, the cautionary tales that parents use to keep children from wandering alone at night. And most exist somewhere in between. Neither saints nor demons, just people trying to survive in a world that considers them threats, managing a condition they never asked for and can never escape. Thanks for joining Bigjuicyhog Gaming for this deep dive into one of Shadowrun's darkest and most complex elements. HMHVV isn't just a game mechanic or a monster type. It's a lens through which we can explore questions about identity, humanity, predation, and survival in a world where the boundaries between natural and supernatural have become hopelessly blurred. Whether you're a player considering an infected character, a GM planning vampire hunting campaign, or just a lore enthusiast fascinated by how Shadowrun handles classic horror concepts in a cyberpunk setting, understanding HMHVV adds depth to your appreciation of the Sixth World. The virus reminds us that in Shadowrun, magic isn't just flashy spells and summoned spirits. It's a fundamental force that reshapes biology, challenges morality, and creates beings that exist in the uncomfortable spaces between human and monster, victim and predator, person and disease. So the next time you're running the shadows and you encounter someone who avoids daylight, who seems just a bit too fast and strong for baseline metahuman, who looks at you with hunger they're trying to hide very hard, remember that they might not be a monster. They might just be someone dealing with the worst diagnosis possible in a world that offers them no cure and precious little sympathy. Or they might actually be a monster. In the Sixth World, sometimes both things are true at once. What are your thoughts on HMHVV? Have you played infected characters in your Shadowrun campaigns? Do you think the infected deserve protection and support, or should society prioritize the safety of potential victims? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing about how different groups handle these moral gray zones in their games. If you enjoyed the deep dive into Shadowrun lore, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. We've got more cyberpunk world building, RPG lore analysis, and gaming deep dives coming your way. This is Bigjuicyhog Gaming, reminding you to watch your back, shoot straight, and conserve ammo, and never, ever cut a deal with a dragon, or accept drinks from strangers who avoid the sunlight. Stay safe out there in the shadows.